As usual, the race started and finished in Freiburg, but there was a break from tradition with the usual Thursday pre-race qualifying session no longer part of the proceedings. Crews were seeded according to their championship positions and faced a frosty pre-dawn start on the Friday. Ahead of them lay one of the toughest challenges in South African motorsport. On the first day, the 491-kilometer route took crews from Freiburg to Heuningvlei and then to Taylorspan in
the Nadel. Kommen.
Last year's winners, Philip Malon and Richard Leek, were the early pace setters in their turbocharged four-wheel drive Toyota Hilux, in their BP Nissan Safari. A big battle between the two trucks was on the cards, but after 96 kilometers, Malon slowed and finally came to a stop with turbocharger problems. First, Reinicker swept past while Malon and Leek attended to their stricken vehicle, followed by Klaus Degener and Hilton Beattie in their Duckham Chanath, and the Durex Raceco of a hard-charging Robin Yates and Mike Pretorius.
Die turbo se seele toegegaan en die olie blaas nou reguit deur in die uitlaatsysteem. So dit sal net 'n paar kilometer hou, dan sal al die olie klaar wees en ons sal die masjien heeltemal beskadig, so ons kan nie aangaan.
Meanwhile, a tough battle was being fought for fourth position with Bucks Carolyn and Kenny Skolthammer in their Raceco, taking on former winners Andre Koch and Dani van der Merwe in their aggressively driven turbocharged Beefmaster Toyota Land Cruiser. Class 5 leaders Bill Angus and Derek Weatherall in their four-cylinder Toyota Hilux 4x4 were followed by veterans Richard Schilling and Fred Levesque in their Mototech Chanath, and the father and son team of Glenn and Steve Parker, who were leading Class 7 in their Orco. Up front, the battle for the overall lead came to a head after 120 kilometers when a farm gate got in the way of Reinicker and Dreher's Nissan. The gate proved to be no match for the Nissan, but the incident gave a determined Klaus Degener and Hilton Beattie the opportunity to close the gap on the leaders. The superior acceleration of the lightweight Duckham Chanath allowed Degener to snatch the lead when Reinicker and Dreher sportingly moved over to let him pass. Veteran Jack Spencer was enjoying himself in his Volkswagen-powered Duckham Sandmaster and led Class 9 for single-seater space frame cars, while a group of schoolchildren gave a rousing reception to local hero Piet Pitter and Tony Salvage in the Toyota Hilux Bucky. Cecil Fincham and Yanni Pretorius found the farm gates rather narrow for their wild V8 Cortina Bucky. Nevertheless, they persevered and were leading in Class 4 after the demise of Linton Draper and Alex Vowles' radical imported Nissan hardbody. Derek Pinoy and Jack Purchase were delayed in the early stages when some 100 meters of barbed wire wrapped itself around the suspension of their Honey Lube Spider. Having solved the problem, they were steadily working their way through the field. In the motorcycle category, Greenup KTM rider Jeremy Davies led overall and in the 250 class. The superbly fit Davies saw no need to pace himself. His plan was to control the two-wheeler category from the front. He was followed by the over 250 class leader Errol Dalton, who rode his Bird Paradise Kawasaki in aggressive style from the start and was hoping to capitalize on any mistakes on the part of the Flying Davies. Third was Winston Yamaha racer Gavin Nimmo, who later in the day had a narrow escape when he fell and was hit from behind by a car. He was unhurt but had to retire at the overnight stop. One of the sensations of the race was the young Jason Andrika. He was holding down fourth place overall on his 200cc Bird Paradise Kawasaki, ahead of many riders on bigger and more powerful motorcycles. Second in the 200cc class was Brian Bontekoning, also on a Bird Paradise Kawasaki, featuring some rather unusual aerodynamic styling. He was riding on the limit in his effort to keep teammate Andrika in sight. Alfie Cox had various problems with his Drivelines Kawasaki. First a wheel bearing seized, then while he was making his way through the field, a thorn punctured a radiator hose, and the resultant water loss caused overheating problems, and he decided to call it a day. The designated service point was at Dinopeng, 218 kilometers into the route. Degener and Beattie still led in the Duckham's Chernow, having enjoyed a trouble-free run up to that point, and were spearheading a total domination of the event by space-frame vehicles. This was a new trend for the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, which has in the past been dominated by trucks. In fact, the last time a space-frame car won the event was in 1982, when Des Tarberton took the honours in his King Scorpion. After the refuel, Robin Yates and Mike Pretorius started to charge in the Durex Raceco, passing the Reyneker-Dreyer Nissan to take second spot. The experienced Reyneker was content to follow in third place, knowing that the unforgiving Kalahari has a habit of upsetting racing teams' best-laid plans. Meanwhile, the consistent Robert Walk led Class 9 in his Samurai after the demise of early class leader Jack Spencer. In Class 5, the privately entered four-wheel drive Toyota Hilux of Karel van Vuren and Koffie Versfeld led after a smooth and trouble-free run. Andre Boerter and Chris Roos were the front runners in Class 7 in their unusual Orco Bakkie, which is powered by a mid-mounted 3-litre BMW engine, while another Orco, the twin-seater of Johan and Ferdi Pieterse, was holding down the lead in Class 10. Wilfried Weslau and Dagmar Blankner in the VW led in Class 2, but there was trouble in store for them in the notorious Riverbed section. While Wolf-Peter Pumfai and Martin Spencer merely got their Volkswagen well and truly stuck in the sand, Weslau and Blankner rolled theirs, with the Lesotho crew lucky to escape injury. Jeremy Davies and his Greenup KTM still held a commanding lead in the motorcycle category, and the chance of him being challenged for the first day lead seemed remote. Errol Dalton was hanging on to second place overall and the 500cc class lead on the Bird Paradise Kawasaki. Rapidly carving through the car field, the Kawasaki star was followed by the spectacular Patrick Andrews from Lesotho on the Winston Yamaha. With the impressive Jason Andrika, also known by the nickname Staffy, still leading the 200cc class on the Bird Paradise Kawasaki. Reyneker and Dreyer arrived at the Taylor's Pan overnight halt first in the Nissan. They took the lead just 4 kilometres from the finish when front-runners Yates and Pretorius ran out of fuel in the Durex Raceco. Second in were Richard Schilling and Fred Levesque in the Motortech Chernow. They were enjoying an uneventful run and did not have to get out of the car once on their way to the overnight stop. The furious Yates and Pretorius managed to borrow fuel from another competitor, and they stormed to the finish to take third spot for the day. Bucks Carolyn and Kenny Skolthammer followed in the Natal Earthworks Raceco with few problems to report and a firm resolve to move up the leaderboard the next day. Running out of fuel became a common problem. Another victim was Klaus Degener, who persuaded Derek Pinoy to tow his car for some of the way. Others ended up by trying to hitch a ride from the TV helicopter or waited patiently for help. Pinoy had to abandon his sportsmanlike efforts to get Degener home when his clutch overheated. Front bike runner Davies foresaw the fuel problems and carried extra petrol with him. After refueling near the end, he blasted past the stranded Degener to come in first in the two-wheeler category. Errol Dalton's Kawasaki ran out of petrol within sight of the finish. It looked as though he would lose second place, but once again, a fellow competitor came to his aid. Despite being knocked unconscious in a high-speed crash earlier in the day, Winston Yamaha rider Patrick Andrews came in third. Ever the showman, Andrews gave this exhibition for the TV cameras after 490 kilometres of racing through some of the most unforgiving terrain anywhere. Richard Carolyn also had fuel problems, but Brian Bontekoning had a clean run for second place in the 200cc bike class. With the competitors settling in for a night under the stars at Taylor's Pan in the middle of the Kalahari, the overall leaders in the car category were Api Reinicker and Lucas Dreyer in the BP Nissan Safari. They were followed by Schilling and Levesque in the Motortech Chernow and Carolyn and Skolthammer in the Raceco. Fumfai and Spencer led Class 2 in the Beetle, while Putter and Salvage upheld Toyota honour in Class 3. Fincham and Pretorius led Class 4, Reinicker and Dreyer Class 6, Butcher and Roos in Class 7, and Schilling and Levesque in Class 8. Class 9 was led by Robert Walk and Class 10 by Weldon and Peaceful. In the motorcycle category, Davies led convincingly on the KTM, followed by Errol Dalton on the Kawasaki and Patrick Andrews on the Winston Yamaha. The Toyota Desert Race has a reputation as being one of the toughest off-road races in the world. When Reinicker and Schilling left Taylor's Pan the next morning, the competitors knew they were in for a grueling time. The second racing section would take crews back to Freiburg on the same route used the previous day, with the first competitor expected at the finish in time for lunch. Chasing Reinicker and Schilling, Yates and Pretorius set off at a furious pace in the Durex Raceco, but were soon to experience overheating problems and eventually had to settle for 8th place. A spectacular Carolyn and Skolthammer were giving their all in the Raceco. Their reward was to be second overall. Degener and Beattie came storming from the back of the field in the Duckham's Chernow, catching up to Pinoy and Purchase in their Spider after 80 kilometres. Degener set the day's fastest time after Pinoy, ever the sportsman, let him through. On his way to a Class 9 win and 6th place overall, Robert Walk and his Samurai fought a tough battle with Nicky and Joe Finch. The Finches were to finish 7th in their first national championship race. Pete Putter and Tolly Salvage took the Toyota Hilux to a well-deserved Class 3 win after a consistent effort. Karel van Vuren and Koffie Versveld initially led in Class 5 but dropped out, while Koos Retief and Paul Besson took their Toyota Land Cruiser to a well-deserved 3rd place in Class 6. Local crew Andre Kok and Dani van der Merwe had fixed the damaged steering wheel on the Beefmaster Toyota Land Cruiser with blow draft, which caused the vehicle to handle rather indifferently. They finished 9th overall. In the motorcycle section, Jeremy Davies set off first on the KTM. From the word go, he proceeded to open up an even bigger gap between himself and the opposition. Davies was chased by Errol Dalton, who later suffered mechanical problems but still won the over 250cc class. The unfortunate Patrick Andrews fell out in the last 100 kilometres, giving 2nd place overall to Hilton Hayward on the KTM. 3rd went to the heroic Jason Andrika on the Bird Paradise Kawasaki, taking the 200cc class in the process. In the car section, Pete Duplessis and Sean van Gesselen took the Toyota Hilux 4x4 to a Class 5 win, with Freiburgers Henry Kirstein and Dries de Klerk noisy and spectacular Class 4 winners in the monster V8 Cortina Bucky. Up front, Richard Schilling and Fred Levesque took the lead when Reinicker and Dreyer's Nissan broke its suspension. It was Schilling's first national championship win in 20 years of competition. A look at the overall results now show privately entered space frame cars to be competitive with the Works Buckies. This adds enormous interest to the rest of this season's events. In the class results, Toyota scored 2 victories, Nissan and Ford 1 each, with the other 4 wins going to Space Frame Specials.
Once we got going, we just overtook people, kept going. The most enjoyable, well-organised event, and very, very happy to at last have won a national. It's taken 20 years.
Jeremy Davies powered his way to a 4th consecutive Toyota 1000 victory, more than 18 minutes ahead of his nearest rival. KTM and Kawasaki shared the top 10 honours, with KTM taking the overall win and 4 placings, while Kawasaki scored 5 placings and Yamaha won. In the class results, Kawasaki reigned supreme in the 200cc category and KTM in the 250cc class, while Kawasaki, KTM and Honda shared the honours in the over 250 category.
Smooth, no problems. Except I ran out of petrol just about a kilometre before the first refill, but I had on me, so just needed half a litre to get there. Nice to be back.
As always, Bucks Carolyn has the last word.
We enjoyed it. But like coming second is like kissing your sister.